Hello and welcome back to the 100 Jobs Project. I'm your host, Katie. And if you are new here, again, this is a space where I'm interviewing 100 people, primarily women, about what they do for work, how they are getting into their fields, and how their job fits into their everyday life. So our guest today, I'm so excited to share with you, is Laurel, who works as an occupational therapist, primarily with kids. Hello, Laurel.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Katie. I'm so excited to be here and share what I do and be part of your awesome project.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to out you for just a second because you are someone that I have known for a long time, and you are currently living in one of my favorite places in the whole world, Montana.
I am. I'm so lucky to live here.
You truly are. And there's actually something about living in Montana that I don't know about you. And this is what I want to start off asking. If given the choice between visiting one of these two places, would you prefer to go to Glacier or Yellowstone? Which is your preferred Montana National Park of choice?
A very easy one for me to answer. I would go to a glacier 100 times over. But we grew up going to Yellowstone. It was every school field trip. So I feel like I feel like I've done all of the things. I was actually talking to my daughter in the car about geysers and all the things that Yellowstone has. And so I want to share those with her. But no, we would go to Glacier and we would hike and do all that is up there a million times.
Yeah, I think that I might be with you on that one. Like Glacier is definitely, in my mind, the prettier of the parks. There's more hiking. There's just a lot more majestic beauty to see. Yellowstone is really cool with all the geothermal activity. And like you said, like that's where I also grew up going.
Yeah.
Every summer, school field trips, it was just a little bit closer. Both will have a special place in my heart, but I typically tell people Glacier over Yellowstone unless you're really into all the geysers,
Yeah.
which the geysers are
Because
cool, but
the only thing is if you do Yellowstone, you can drive down to Teton. And so you can get the beautiful mountains and the lakes and all the hiking and see the geothermal if you're like coming out once. But as a Montanan who like has access to them, yeah, I would never drive into the park willingly. Like I would avoid it actually and drive around.
very fair. I'm trying to think of like which park I've seen more wildlife at, and I might have to say Yellowstone, but that might just be because I've been there more. I think as far as like bears go, I've seen a similar amount of bears in both places, if anyone's looking for a bear sighting.
Yeah, I would agree. I've seen probably equal bears, but otherwise all the bison are in Yellowstone. All of the other animals, like Glacier has the mountain goats, and we had the opportunity, gosh, it must have been last summer, maybe 2 summers ago now, but to stay at Sperry Lodge up in Glacier. And you live with the mountain goats, the baby mountain goats, like my daughters are sitting 2 feet from them and they just all
Oh,
cohabit. It's the coolest thing ever. So there is different wildlife, I would say, and different
yeah.
experiences. Yeah.
Well, getting to know you just a little bit more, I would love to
Yeah.
know, what is your ideal Saturday these days? You have two little ones.
Yeah, I've got two littles, so an almost 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. And because it's winter, our ideal Saturdays are at the ski hill. We are there bright and early in the morning because we have already been up and lived a full day by the time the ski hill opens. But once we get up there, our ski hill, Bridger lets me throw the little one in my backpack still. So she's in the backpack on my back while I ski, and then I get a ski with my older one. And just starting out, we're making turns, we're doing all the things, we're practicing the chairlift. But that's what we've been living for these days. We're up there every Saturday, we're up there every Wednesday when I have a break from work. So that's been our primary go-to right now, which is great.
Amazing. And are you packing lunch in, or are you getting food at the lodge?
We live for Bridger Bowl French fries.
The
Live for the French
fries.
fries.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't eat anything else up there. We get a hot cocoa that we all share and a thing of French fries, and life is really great.
It's perfect. Everything that you
Yeah.
need for a good ski day. Now, is
Yes.
your older one, is she on greens or is she moved to blues?
She's on greens and she's
Okay.
doing, yeah, we have her in ski lessons right now and she is like up on the real chairlifts. We're no longer on the bunny hill, which has changed my life drastically. And
Yeah.
I'm no longer skiing, crunched down backwards in front of her. So she can ski herself down the greens and she's doing really awesome.
That's amazing. I was going to be
Yeah.
very impressed if she was moving on to blues
Not
at
yet.
her
No.
young age, but You guys are a skiing family, so you never know when there's a prodigy.
Yeah. Yeah, she might be. I tried to get her into the Olympics, show her who she could become, but she wasn't really biting on the skiers as much as like the figure skaters. She was really in on those this year. So,
Yeah, the figure skaters, for better or worse, are truly like the candy that like brings all little girls, especially into the Olympics. But
yes.
honestly, as long as it starts a love of the Olympics early on, there's time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is a love of the Olympics. We went all out this year. We did it. So we loved
Amazing.
it.
Now, something else that I have known about you is you are, or at least were, tell me if this isn't the case anymore, you are a sparkling water connoisseur. I have to know, is there a particular brand or flavor or a mix you make yourself that is your go-to sparkling water these days?
That is a great question. We live and breathe sparkling water in this house and have my entire life. Like we are not bandwagoners. This has been my drink of life.
No. Like, I remember
But
you guys got one of the soda streams probably before it was called a soda stream,
yeah,
before it was like publicly available. I don't know how you snagged one, but anyway,
yeah,
you guys are
yeah.
the OG sparkling water family.
We are so invested in sparkling water that my aunt, her sink dispenses sparkling water. It's not even a soda stream anymore. It just
Whoa.
comes right out of the tap. It's the coolest thing ever. But our go-to is Spindrift. Now that Costco sells Spindrift, it's our go-to. But mostly I'm a plain sparkling water with a little bit of lemon. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
will cut my own lemon. I don't get fancy with it. We don't do all the flavors. It's just like the plain, no added flavors. And then we add our own lemon or lemonade.
Honestly, I think that water in general with lemon is very underrated. Whether it's water or
Yes.
sparkling water, but if you have fresh lemon, like it hits different than any sort of artificial anything.
Every time we visit my sister in the Bay Area, we bring home lemons like that are fresh picked from her lemon tree.
Oh,
And we just like savor them until we can go back again or she comes out to see us and we can have them. You know, you lived out there. They're the best. Yeah.
truly, just fresh fruit picked off of the trees.
Yeah.
Amazing. There is nothing like it. You're getting me really excited for warmer weather, which unfortunately we just had out here like a couple of really nice days. And now it's cold again and will be for a little while. So, anyway, someday it will be lemon season again. We'll get
Someday
there.
we'll get there.
Now, this is a question too that I ask everyone who comes on this show. I love to get a little glimpse into your work day through what is in your work bag, or if you're working at home, which I know you primarily do, like what is at your workspace? What are like 3 to 4 things that you are keeping at your desk that you use on a regular basis or even just like to look at?
So we read this question. I was reading it to my husband and we were laughing because my desk is his gaming setup in the evenings. So I have this like absurd, curved screen computer that nobody ever needs to work from, but it's his gaming computer. So it's what I use. And Byron's only comment on what was at my desk, he just laughed and he goes, "Your 3-day-old coffee that you just can't finish." We live for coffee. We drink more coffee than you could possibly imagine, but there is always a cup of coffee on my desk or a mug of coffee on my desk that is old, like too old to be drinking, but we drink it when we need it and it's there for
Hmm.
me. So that's my comfort and my go-to is my old grimy coffee. But other than that, my desk is a modge podge of my daughter's artwork and unicorn necklaces, which are very important and wind up here not because I want them here. It's not really my desk. Like I don't get a space like that just because of where I like working from home, but sharing a space makes it.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I love a good dual purpose space, and I would venture to guess that there are probably other parts of the house that you have made your own a little more than
Yes.
his gaming station that you also happen to work from. I will say
Exactly.
some of his gaming stuff has maybe like worn off on you a little bit when we were setting up for this. Laurel was incredible about figuring out like different mic options and everything to the extent that I've never seen a podcast guest be versed in that before. So
Yes, we have
there you
all the
go.
options, anything you could need. I think that rubbed off on us during COVID when I was started working from home and Byron was teaching from home. We would work next to each other and you needed a microphone that picked up you, but not him. And all this sort of, we have all the weirdest equipment and video cams and stuff, but
Yeah, that is actually a very complex situation when you're sharing a space, both working from there. How do you both be
yeah.
saying things at the same time and having everyone else not hear everything? glad you have a great workspace. And I'm giggling a little bit about the stuff of your daughters that ends up there that you don't want there. So many parents are
Always.
like, this is what I want. These mementos remind me of my kid, which is lovely. But sometimes it's, okay, they remind me of my kid and that I had to clean up our house. So
Exactly, exactly. And this is not where these belong. Actually, they have spaces somewhere else.
you've got enough work going on at work. You don't need to bring all of the housework into your office space. Well, let's talk a little bit about your job and how you got to be here. When you were growing up, were you like exposed to occupational therapy as a profession, or is this something that you discovered later on your own?
I thought a lot about this kind of over the years. People have asked how I got into this, and I have like a very clear origin story for my work, but it never really had occupational therapy in it for a long time. So
Yeah.
growing up, my best friend from pre-childhood, her mom and my mom are great friends. She was diagnosed early with autism, and I was sort of her therapy tool for a lot of years as we were kids. When she needed a social buddy in speech therapy or ABA therapy or any other therapies she was in, I was that person and I was her therapy, which was great. And it exposed me to so much of the therapy world, especially for autistic people. So from a very young age, I could have told you I was going to be a therapist or a special ed teacher, and I wanted to work with autistic people. That was where I wanted to be. I think there was a lot of years where that looked a lot more like special ed teacher. And then in college, my freshman year of college, I volunteered in a special ed classroom in little public school in Helena, Montana, and quickly realized that at no fault of the special ed teachers, that wasn't what I wanted to do. That was a lot of paperwork and a lot of behind the scenes work and almost no interaction with the kids. They don't get that because they have too much paperwork to do to be able to be that. And so I was like, well, that's not it. So pivot. What am I going to do from there?
Yeah. Really quick, too. It sounds like you had this idea of kind of the general area that you wanted to work in for a long time. When you were in middle school and high school, did you pursue jobs that really focused on that? Or did you just do totally different stuff and say, this is something that's going to come down the road later. Let me do what I'm going to do and live my life as a high schooler?
I was all in on it. I think, weren't you well, I don't know if you were were you in Partners Club with me in high school? We
Best
started the
buddies?
Partners Club at
Yeah.
Bozeman High School. Yeah, the Best Buddies program and Partners Club. I did like instead of study halls, I would TA in the special ed classrooms at Bozeman High for a couple of summers. One of our family friends in town owned a therapy clinic, and it was an amazing physical therapist in town. And she had a preschool associated with her therapy practice. And I volunteered in that classroom and loved it. Yeah, like this was little kids, specifically special needs populations, has always been where my heart has gone and has always been where I knew I wanted to work and be and spend my time. So it's always been what I have pursued.
Yeah.
Honestly, I haven't really pursued much outside of it as you asked that question.
That's so special and such a unique thing. I'm getting in the realm of doing like 20 or so interviews, and there's only a couple of people that I really feel like have had this vision of what they wanted to do from a young time. And it is so special to hear those stories because you can really build a lot of experiences, especially early on, that lead you to become really like niched down in what really fits with you later on.
Yeah, it totally changes sort of the course of where you go within a really broad field when you know your niche already. So that's been cool.
Yeah, definitely. So let's go back to college. You had thought about doing some special ed stuff. You'd worked in a classroom for a little bit and decided too much paperwork. You don't really have control over how many kids are coming into your classroom, all that sort of stuff. What did you start thinking about at that point?
I went directly back to the therapies, and the only two I was really familiar with were speech therapy and physical therapy, and then like the behavioral side of things. I knew I didn't want to go down the behavioral therapy route. That wasn't kind of where my heart was or the type of therapy that I loved. So I observed and interned with a speech therapist and a physical therapist and was just like, this isn't what I envisioned. Like, this isn't the area I want to help. This isn't what I want to
Yeah.
do. And in talking with those therapists and being like, this is like, what I envisioned helping with was just much more of like, I want you to thrive. I want your life to look the way you want it to, and I want you to thrive in that. And they both were kind of like, oh, you just didn't know that this other world existed. And they both pointed me to occupational therapy. And I dove in and I was like, this is it. Like, this is exactly where I wanted to be, what I was meant to be. And I started interning and collecting hours. And to get into grad school, you have to collect a bunch of either observation or internship style hours. And so collecting those hours and just loving everybody I observed, every different niche that there is, even the ones that weren't with the kids. I worked for a while with a hand therapist who treated adults who broke their hands mostly. And I was like, this is so cool. And so all the different worlds that it could be, I have loved.
Just to level set for people who might not be super familiar with occupational therapy, please, Laurel, correct me if I'm wrong, but occupational therapy really helps people, I think, rediscover and figure out skills for daily living, whether they're recovering from like an illness or, like you said, a broken bone or sometimes a disability. Is that a okay overview?
You probably said it better than I could say it. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what we do.
Well, it's really cool too to hear that in some of the early stages of trying to figure out what you wanted to do, you had this vision, but you couldn't quite place like where it was. And I think that sometimes when you, at least I found for me, if I go and talk with someone about, "Hey, here's what I want to do," it can be a little bit intimidating to speak what I want out loud and actually vocalize it. But when you do, that is really when people are actually able to help you and point you in the right direction. And how cool to have multiple people hear that from you and say, yeah, go, go, go this way. This is what you want to do.
Yeah, you just have to know how to verbalize it and have the courage to do that. Both of those areas are challenging and can be really intimidating. And once you can kind of do that, I think a lot of doors open and a lot of people want to be supporters and cheerleaders and help you.
Well, it sounds like you got lucky too, in that you were able to vocalize things and people pretty early on were able to point you in the right direction. But I'd have to imagine for others, you might have to swing and miss a few times. But it is definitely helpful to figure out what it is, vocalize it, and then just go for it. Okay. So you collected all of your observation hours, and then I'd imagine you started applying to grad programs. What do occupational therapy grad programs typically look like in like their structure and what you're doing?
They have changed and changed back a little bit over the past couple of years. So it's a master's program or a doctorate program. And for a while they were requiring a doctorate and then they've backed off on that a little. So when I was applying, there was both programs available. I had no idea. I didn't know that there was a difference. I didn't know really anything about it. So I started just applying to schools. There wasn't one in the state of Montana when I was looking. So I knew I had to go out of state and I just picked 10 programs that looked semi-affordable to me, as well as being programs that were well accredited and people had talked and spoken highly of, and applied to those. I wound up going my first interview for school. So you apply, you get accepted for an interview, you go for your interviews. My mom and I, it was an interview for the University of Texas's medical branch, which is where I wound up going. Loved UTMB, best program. It was really amazing. We landed in Houston and I'm guiding my mom directions on how to get to this school. I had no idea we were driving onto an island until we got on the bridge. And I was like, Mom, I think this is not on mainland. I didn't even know what to look at or what to think about. I just applied and put myself out there. And so I wound up interviewing at a couple of schools and then ultimately choosing based on mostly money. Texas schools are pretty cheap and they're great education. And so that's how I wound up where I was. But again, it was a great program. I loved it. It was a 2-year program because it was a master's. The doctorate programs are 3 years. It's all in person. The last 6 months of the program are internships. And so you do 3-month internships for your master's. And so I did one of those in Galveston at an outpatient adult center. So it was mostly people recovering from strokes or from broken bones, those sorts of things. And then I did my second internship at the hospital that I work for now and have been there ever since.
Would you say that most of your classwork was pretty focused in the classroom, or were you getting a lot of experiences where you were going outside of the classrooms, or was that mostly internship stuff?
We had a lot of in-class classwork, but then we also had labs. So each semester has sort of focused on a different area of occupational therapy. After kind of you got through the general, this is the base stuff every occupational therapist needs to know, then they really honed in on sort of the different areas. And so we had a lab where we went and we worked at a rehabilitation center for people recovering from a variety of different medical needs. And then we also had labs that were more in the classroom and we practice things on each other. It's very hands-on. Everything OT is very hands-on. There's not a lot of areas where you can't be hands-on and you have to feel a lot of it. And so even for the classroom, classwork stuff, it was a lot of like, okay, grab your classmate and feel this or do this and move like this. So it's very active. It's very hands-on.
While you were in the program, were you reaffirmed like, okay, yes, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I want to do?
Once I got into the program, I think I got too close-minded. And I
Okay.
really was like, well, I'm only here to learn about being a pediatric OT. That's what I want to do. And at that point, my understanding of pediatric OT was very like school-based, handwriting, and fine motor skills. So I kind of was like, I don't need to learn the rest of this stuff. And I shut that world out and was like, this is where I will focus. Really, it took me into my internships to realize like, oh, as a pediatric OT, you need to be able to do all of it still. Like, these kids aren't coming to you just with fine motor difficulties. And so you need to be able to support all these other areas as well. So yeah, it took me a long time to open up my horizons again and be like, I need to have a lot bigger mindset than I had.
I'd imagine that some of that just has to come through experience. I can't blame you for having that take a
Yeah.
little bit of time. Now, with your internships, were those really coordinated through the school, or did you have to do a lot of work on your own to find them and be accepted?
I think every school does that differently. So I can't
Okay.
speak for like programs across the country, but for my school specifically, there's an internship coordinator. She found and assigned us to all of our internships, and she met with us and asked lots of questions about what we wanted to do to make sure she was trying to fit us into our areas. And you have to do 2 short-term internships in different fields and then 2 long-term internships in different fields. And so you have to see a little bit of a variety in the process, but she tries to work within what you want and also where you want to live and what they have available. She was awesome. She worked with me through one of the semesters I didn't have a car in Texas for it. I was like, it has to be bikeable. I have to be able to bike on the island to where you send me. But no, somebody else did all of that for us. You couldn't have a relationship with your internship people prior to it because they didn't want you to get passed just because it was like somebody you'd worked with in the past, if that makes sense. So
That does.
you could try and set one up if you were really interested in a certain area, but for the most part, they didn't really want you doing that.
No, that is good to know. And it sounds like a really like fabulous benefit of that program to have such a hands-on internship coordinator who's working with you.
Yeah.
Now, post-graduation, was there any sort of licensure test exam that you had to take?
Yeah, there's a big test you have to take to become licensed and registered following graduation. And my program, again, did a great job. They almost built it into our schooling. So they made sure that for those of us who were using student loans to live and pay for things, that our student loans didn't end until after we'd taken the exam, even though we were done with classes. So they had really
Yeah.
helped us with that. And then we took our exams, and then once you take your exam, I want to say it took me about a month to get my scores back. So you do have this waiting period where you couldn't work yet, but you had already done everything you could do or what that was in your power to become a licensed OT.
The waiting periods are always brutal. Doesn't matter
The
what they're
worst.
for, but you're just like waiting for your life to begin. So, can you tell me a little bit then about your first role in the field of occupational therapy? You
Yeah.
are, out of school, you've passed the test. What are you doing then?
I was super fortunate. I fell in love with where I did my second internship, and thankfully they loved me back. And so before I left my internship, they offered me a job contingent on getting my license. And so I knew that I was going back to where I worked following licensure and following my exam. So I finished my internship. My husband did not think this was funny at the time, especially, but we had planned on moving back to Bozeman. So I was finishing this internship on the East Coast and we were moving back to Bozeman. He had moved home from Texas to Bozeman. And on like the second to last day of my internship, he was interviewing for a job in Bozeman and sort of accepting this job. Like it was an all-in-one like internship or interview to kind of sign your contract sort of thing. And I called him midway through the day and was like, they offered me a job. You can't accept this job. Like we're moving to the
Oh
East
my
Coast.
gosh.
And he's like, I'm sitting here at lunch with these coworkers. What do you mean? And I was like, we're not moving home. Like I can't turn down this job. And so he had to do a major pivot. I'm so thankful that he was flexible and was willing to do that for me. But yeah, so they offered me this job out there. I got to come home and spend the summer in Bozeman studying for my exam. I took the exam out here. And then as soon as I got my license and was certified, we moved out to the East Coast and lived
Moved
out
back.
there and worked there for a while. Yeah. I don't know that that answers your questions because that's sort of a middle time between those two.
No, that is helpful, and I mean, I think it also just gives people a good idea of, born, raised in Montana, to Texas for school, to the East Coast, like, you were really going all over, and that's hard. That's hard to do. You're
Yeah.
moving cross country, like, multiple directions, multiple times, and you got married. I'm trying to remember, was it, like, at the toward the end of undergrad before you moved to Texas?
I got married in the middle of my grad school, during
Okay.
one of my grad school breaks. I went down to Texas for a year by myself while we were engaged, and then came home, got married the summer of 2017. Poor Byron followed me down to Texas for my last year of grad school. I left halfway through that year for internships.
Mhm.
He moved all of our stuff home to Montana, thinking that's where we were moving. And then I was like, hey, move it to the East Coast
Moving to
instead.
East Coast.
Yeah. But yeah, no, there was lots of moving around, lots of flexibility during that time. You're not even in a consistent job or a consistent anything when you're bouncing through those internships.
But it's so cool, I think, to see men and partners being really supportive of women's careers because that wasn't always the norm. I think, like, even just 40, 50 years ago, it was very much reversed. And so when you find a partner who is willing to do stuff like that for you, I feel like that's when you know, like, okay, I got to hold on to this guy. He's coming with me across the country, all over. And that's just, yeah, very cool to see.
Yeah, I'm extremely fortunate to have him and have his support behind all of it. It has not been the norm for a lot of women or a lot of years. And so to see that changing and the support really coming out has been awesome.
We could probably talk about that in and of itself all day, but I would love
Yes.
to know a little bit more about what you were doing on the day to day with this first job. You were primarily working with kids, you were primarily working in person. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I primarily working with kids. So the clinic and the hospital I work for is an autism only or autism specific clinic. So all of my clients are either in the process of getting a diagnosis or have an autism diagnosis by the time I am seeing them. I was working in person with a really wide age range, which is something that I fell in love with and I didn't think I would love. But my youngest kiddos are 15 months to 2 years old, right as they're getting those diagnoses. And then all the way up, we can see kids or young adults through 26 years old. So all the
Wow.
way up to young adults who are figuring out life and independence and all of those good things that are so hard for everybody. I get to see them once a week for an hour and we work on a really wide variety of things. And that's something I've fallen in love with too, is when I started, I kind of just, like I said, I was really narrow-minded into what I could do or would do, but I'm working on everything from interaction with your parents and play skills with your parents for those littles to handwriting and schoolwork and all of those things, but also self-care skills, brushing your own teeth, washing your own body, being an independent person, and into those teens and young adults of, what's next for you, as well as independence. How do we cook and clean on our own? How do we do these things and be an independent young person? My scope became really big really fast, and I fell in love with just how variant it could be. For 1 hour I could be in with a kiddo who's 2 years old and doesn't have any words yet, and all the way into walking in the next room to a 26-year-old who's getting ready for a job and how do we do job interviews.
So definitely a little beyond the scope of handwriting and fine motor skills, but
Very much.
it's very cool to see the variety. Now, what was your actual office like? I'd imagine, like, did you have a lot of different tools and things maybe for like younger kids? Did you have, like, I don't know, cooking stations or anything for older kids that were working on some of those life skills?
Yeah, we have a really cool clinic design at my clinics. We now are up to 4 different locations, but when I was there, it was 3 or 2, opening a third, kind of as I
Okay.
started as an actual OT. We have individual treatment rooms that are just like small, little, almost cubicle kind of areas where you're just working one-on-one with a kid on more of those handwriting and those refined
Okay.
things.
So that might
We
have
have
like some chairs and a desk,
Yeah, exactly.
basically.
Very
Pretty
plain
plain.
chairs and a
Okay.
desk. Then we have big sensory motor gyms. So big gyms with, swings and slides and every sensory tool you could imagine, and rock climbing walls and different balance beams, and for all sorts of different sensory needs, gross motor needs, all of that sort of stuff. And then we have apartment style spaces. We have small apartments in each of our clinics that have full kitchens, laundry setups, bathrooms, Murphy beds, the type that pull out of
Okay.
the wall so you can
Yep.
practice all the bed, you know, area related things, little closets with lots of clothes for practicing folding clothes or getting dressed and undressed and all of those different things.
So cool and so different than so many people who go into an office with cubicles and headsets and little keyboards clickety clacking all day long.
So different. Yeah. And then we have like all of our desks and our computers and stuff are in a little, we call it a bullpen, like little area where all of us are together, which is so great. Some of our locations are more organized than others just based on the organizational systems of the people that work there. But the one that I
Sure.
started at was full to the brim of every game and every pair of different style scissors and colored pencils and everything just falling on top of you no matter where you sat. I mean, just everything you could imagine we have our hands on and have access to using.
That is so incredible. Obviously, your job has changed a little bit since you first started on the East Coast. Now, as we mentioned, you're back in Montana. What has that looked like? You're still working for the same employer, but you've shifted a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, we made a major shift. So we made a major shift during COVID, just like everybody. We all got pushed remote. And at first, I remember a phone call with my boss one of those first weeks in March being like, this won't work. This will never work for our population. What are we
Yeah.
going to do? I'm sort of one of the techier people that works in our office. And so she was like, I don't know, but if anybody's going to figure out how we can do this, it's you. So help. And we made it work. And we actually found that telehealth for our population, for a variety of reasons, is really actually an awesome system. I now get to live in Montana and work from here and raise my kids at home with my family and in the mountains. Work is really different. Still seeing the same wide range of kids, although I have transitioned to a lot more of the older kids just because they respond better to telehealth. And though I still see a lot of young kids that I'm doing more parent training with, and we're just doing a lot of coaching and talking through hard things. But I work right here. This is my background every day, and we're working on all of the same things just in their kitchens or in their bathrooms. I either bring pots and pans down if we're cooking and so that I can demonstrate flipping a pancake right here in front of them, or my camera does detach. So we detach and we walk into the bathroom and we brush our teeth together and practice all of those sorts of things in different settings. I really do the same work. I don't get to do the gross motor and the sensory stuff quite as much.
Sure.
Nobody has swings and slides in their room or in their houses.
Yeah.
We have different ways. I got the yoga mats behind me. We do jumping jacks and planks and all sorts of different things all day long. But I get to do it from here, and they get to practice these skills in their own houses where it's more comfortable, but also it's more realistic to what their life looks like.
Yeah, that's true because I'd imagine that for a lot of people, they come into the space and it's a little bit more controlled if it's like a big sensory or apartment style living space that's been set up. And it is just different than doing things in your own home. So
Yeah.
I also wonder if it's easier sometimes for people to just tune in from the comfort of their own home rather than having to travel, especially if they may not have their own driver's licenses and are having to coordinate rides or public transport. So what a cool thing to be able to offer people.
Yeah, definitely. And especially in like the area where my hospital is, it's not a state that has a lot of resources. So there's people that were driving 4+ hours for an hour appointment each week, and to be able to say we can still work on these things, but you don't have to find 8 hours in your day to drive here and back, has really opened up a lot of doors.
Definitely. So, what does a typical work day look like for you now? What time are you waking up? What does your morning look like? And then walk me through a day.
I have a different day every day. They're very
Okay.
set, thankfully. But that's been one of the biggest blessings of this job for me is I have so much flexibility with my kids and with my time zone change because I work East Coast hours and I'm in Montana. Wake up and I see clients what is 6 a.m. for me, but it's only 8 a.m. for them. So they're not getting up on unnecessarily early, but my girls are still sleeping. So I am primary caretaker. The older one goes to preschool, but for socialization, not all day. My younger one's home with me all day. And thank God for my mother. She's also home with my mom a lot. I wake up early. I see clients before my girls get up. Then once my girls are awake, I am with them until the afternoon when either my mom or my husband is home from work, and my mom and husband take over and become childcare. And I sit back down in the afternoon, which works really well for my clients because it's after school hours for them. So they're
Yeah.
not having to get pulled out of school for anything. And I can see them in those after school hours. And I see clients in the evening time up until dinner time for me, which is typically bedtime for a lot of them. And then we do it all over the next day. I do have my Mondays. I work pretty much all day. My mom
Okay.
doesn't work on Mondays, so she helps with the girls. And that's like my really big, I get everything done for the whole week on Mondays. And then the rest of the week, I kind of balance it in between my girls.
When are you finding time to, cook and work out and all of that jazz?
All over the place. I have the best husband in the world. I can't tell you the last time I cooked a dinner. That's not my job in the relationship.
Moves across the country
Thankfully.
for you and
Yeah.
cooks dinner.
And he cooks all the dinners. I'm telling you, he's a keeper.
And he makes your coffee too, doesn't he?
And he makes my coffee. He's very good. Yes. So yeah, we live with my parents, so that's a huge help. We have 2 extra sets of hands that are helping. We could not do it without them. They're so amazingly helpful. I'm not the food prep person, so that alleviates a lot of time. Laundry and cleaning the
Perfect.
house can get done once the kids are in bed or
Sure.
other things. Working out happens before I log on with clients a lot of mornings. That alarm clock goes off really early, and it all happens from home. This space that you're looking at here is my office, my gym, my child entertainment center, all of the above all day long. I do those things around them or with them. They fold the laundry with me and we do it all there. And that's probably the product of being an OT's kid because that's what you got to do, honey. We got to fold all the clothes or you got to help me move them to the dryer or whatever thing is next. They love to vacuum. They love to sweep the floors. Whatever it is, they're helping.
What do you find that you're doing to unwind when you do have a moment or two to yourself?
I get caught in the social media scroll very quickly. I don't know that it's actually considered unwinding. I'm sure psychologists would tell you it is not. But that is where my brain goes instantly if I have a moment. I love audiobooks. So I do a lot of listening to audiobooks like when I'm documenting. That's what I'm doing is listening to those.
What's your audiobook genre of choice?
A little bit of everything. I've
Okay.
been doing lots of historical fictions or nonfictions really, and lots of trashy beach reads.
Perfect.
But I listen to a lot of them in the car with the girls, so they can't be too trashy of beach reads because they're on for the whole group car to hear. I will say, I don't think most people would consider my audiobook listening to be an unwinding thing because I listen on like 3 speed. So
Okay.
it happens fast.
Your brain is moving.
But I think as a full-time mom, full-time job, full-time everything happens really fast. And so my brain is just used to that speed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know. That's probably an area that I should improve my life. Truly, Katie, is I need an unwind and I don't have one.
I mean, it sounds like you do get some time when you're off work. I mean, skiing on the weekends with your
Yes,
girls or on a
100%.
Wednesday afternoon. I mean, what a beautiful way to be outside, getting fresh air and being actually like physically present in the moment. So I hope you're at least giving yourself credit for that. I know you also get a lot of like walks in with other friends, family. Like it may not be every day, but just from knowing you, like I know you work some of those things into your world.
That's true. And I guess I didn't really count those because I do them with my girls, but they are our joy and they bring us all so much joy. And so yeah, we hike every single day. Those girls are on my back in backpacks hiking or in the stroller bundled in heated blankets if it's too cold for the backpacks, or we are skiing or we are biking or we are doing something active. And that is outside time is our happiness.
A lot of happiness there. And I would imagine that there's also a lot of happiness and satisfaction that comes from just your job in general. And please correct me or forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but it sounds like with what you're doing, you're really able to see people start at one place and progress. And I have to imagine that that is so gratifying and cool and heartwarming to see.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. My job, sometimes you have to focus on the little victories because things change slowly with some of my clients, but there is progress and it's really fun to be able to point that out to families or fun is the wrong word. It's really rewarding. Yeah, it has been 15 weeks of us working on this, but they are getting dressed by themselves. And that's huge. That's huge for you as a mom. That's huge for them as an independent 10-year-old. Like all of the things. Yeah, my job is really rewarding. And there's a lot of joy that comes from being able to share that with families.
Have there been any particular instances that stand out to you as just things that like really stick with you as this was something that was really, really cool to see when I was working with this client?
I would say it's less the things and more the clients. I have some clients that are like family to me now, and I still have relationships with their families, and we are very close. And I have got to see them, a couple of them in particular that come to mind instantly. We started together and they were 16 and they're 26, and I'm discharging them because they're too old for services and they're living independently or they're thriving in their situation. So just getting to watch so much of these kids' journeys and so much of their transformation. And, I think the one task that sometimes sticks out as the most rewarding for kids is tying shoes. When a kid can tie their shoes on their own, there is so much power in that for them. And there's so much joy in that for them. And so that's one that constantly comes back as like a look, like you can see just so much pride in them, and they're really proud of it. And their parents are so excited for them. And it's been a struggle for so long. And so but just watching their whole journeys has been a really cool part of staying with the company for so long, is I've gotten to see kids really change.
I can imagine. And I need to like not think about this too much. Otherwise, I will get really emotional because you're changing lives and that is so special. I would love to know what are the differences in occupational therapy between working for a company versus doing private practice. Do people really do private practice or is most everyone like working for a company that provides this as a broader service?
Yeah, no, private practice is a really big area. So my husband is a special ed teacher, or was a special ed teacher for a lot of years. And it's something we throw around a lot of like, what could we open ourselves? What could we do ourselves? We ultimately have too many ideas and not enough time in our day right now, and are both very content in our jobs. But private practice is a really big thing. So my company is owned by a hospital. I would say that's not the norm, actually. I
Okay.
would say there's a lot of private clinics. Most places are private clinics that are, owned by somebody who started it themselves and has slowly gained so many clients that they've hired on other therapists to work for them or with them. Like even just within the Bozeman community, there's 3 or 4 different private practices that are, a speech therapist, an occupational therapist, and a physical therapist that all work in the same office and share clients who need multiple resources or multiple services. But there's a lot of different ways that can look. Sometimes those private practices come into your home and can support you in your home. A lot of them are clinic based, I would say, private practices. And then there's school OT as well. If your child is on an IEP, they can qualify for therapy services through the school district. And then from 3 years old all the way through 21, they can receive therapy services there as well.
I'd imagine too that with like so many different options within the field, there's probably like a huge range of salaries. Having worked in this field for a while, what kind of salary range would you maybe expect people to like see starting out versus more established? Any ideas?
Yeah, it depends so drastically on the area that you want to go into.
Okay.
Peds therapists make the least, but they get so much. Not that everybody else doesn't get the rewards. The old people are so great too and so
Yeah.
fun to work with. But peds therapists are not where the money is, definitely.
Okay.
And I would say starting out, depending on where you are as a full-time therapist, $50,000 to $60,000, and you kind of cap around 90. I would say
Okay.
from what I've seen and what I know. And when you go out on your own and you do it on your own, totally different because you're making
Yeah.
all of that money, but you also have all the overhead that comes with that and
Right.
those sorts of things. If you're in other areas, if you're working as an inpatient in the hospital therapist because you work holiday hours, because you work weekends, all of those sorts of things as well,
Yeah.
you make more right off the bat. So you
Yeah.
start with bigger salaries. And I don't know what those are as much just because it's never even been an
Sure.
area I've looked at. And then when you get into like geriatric care and like skilled nursing facilities and stuff, you can start around 90,000. It's a lot harder to get people to commit to those jobs.
Yeah.
So they pay a little bit better, but it's still so rewarding. And there's so much joy that comes from hearing their stories and helping them regain independence in areas that they've lost or be able to find joy in participating in things in a new way. And
I really think too that regardless of what your job is or what you're doing, when you have a chance to actually connect with people and get to know them and see them as human beings and help them feel seen and appreciated and celebrated, like that is just such a huge reward in and of itself. So whether you're doing
absolutely.
that with kids or in a hospital setting or with older people, like just really, really, really cool. Now, we've chatted about a lot of things. even just how you balance your family and your life and your career. As you think holistically about everything, what does success really look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's changed really a lot as I have grown a family and
Yeah.
become a mom. Like it looks way different now. We were chatting before the recording started that one of my girls has a little bit more medical complexity to her. And so, my job provides the flexibility to be able to be at all of her appointments and not miss anything and support her in the ways she needs that. That has become a huge part of my success, being able to be at ski lessons and pick my girls up from that and go skiing with them and share in that with them. All of those things, you know, they're they're afforded to me because the job I currently have. And I think if you had asked me, even at the beginning of the pandemic when we transitioned into telehealth, if I would have done this long term, I would have told you no way. And now I can't really see a world without doing it this way because of what it gives me. So, yeah, I think success has constantly been changing for us. Like I said, my husband and I have talked about and thrown around so many ideas of like different things we could open in Bozeman or ways we could support the Bozeman community and specifically the autistic population here. And I think we love the ideas we throw around and then we're just kind of like, yeah, maybe that's a one day success for us, but that's not realistic right now. And so I think maybe later we'll define it with those things, but right now the family time is worth everything.
Yeah, it's really special to be able to be present where you are. I just talked with someone recently who I want to say that she was just saying, like, be where your feet are. And I love that thought and that feeling and that sentiment of be where you are now. And then some of the future dreams that you have can follow. So I think that's
Yes.
beautiful. And I can't
Yeah.
wait to see what you guys do once seasons of life change a little bit. Well, thank you so much again for chatting with me. I wish you success wherever life takes you. And that wraps us up for today. If you enjoyed the show today, you can find us at the100jobsproject.com, on Instagram, same place. Take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram story, leave a review, all that jazz. And we will see you next Wednesday. Thank you so much.